Hello, and wherever you are in the world. My name is Jeanette Collins, and I am from a wellspringofthought.com. I am an author and a writing coach, and I want to tell you about a whisper that I heard. And the Lord whispered to me, "The world is black," while I was reading this book on hearing the voice of God. And immediately I knew what it meant and what He wanted me to do with it. But I had my doubts and my fears. I was afraid of what people were going to think. I was afraid of jumping into this thing about race. I'm usually a pretty neutral party, or I keep my opinions to myself. But this is not based on opinion. If you believe in the origin of man, if you believe in the Genesis story that God created one man and one woman from the dust of the earth, then you will understand and accept that we are all black. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what language you speak. It doesn't matter where in the world you're from. We are all from one blood, and we are all family. So how do we get to this division of races, this division of people fighting against each other, thinking that they're better than each other, when all along God sees us as black? How do we get there? Well, apart from the natural geographic separation of peoples, as we've seen in the Bible, as far as the story of Babel goes, when the tower was being built and then people were separated by languages, apart from that, when we know people had to be separated and go their separate ways, their different ways, so they could communicate with one another according to their language, that's the only separation of peoples that I know of. God had already determined where people would go, what their boundaries would be, but He never divided them according to race. It was only nations, it was only language. So the division that we have today, based on skin color, based on just people's ideas of what race is really artificial. It's really man-made. It is not something that was intended. And so we have a generation of people, we have older generations and new generations believing a lie, basically, believing that they are better, believing that they are different somewhat, biologically, anthropologically, and genetically. While that may be the case because of the many years of division, when you come back to the root of it, of where we all began from Adam and Eve. We all began from one blood. And because we all came from one blood, we are family. We are the human family. Even Jane Elliott, that famous school teacher who did an experiment on her children, on her school children, the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, she did the blue-eye, brown-eyed experiment and discovered that racism and discrimination, prejudice, is a learned behavior and not something that you're born with. And so the answer, the solution that we need to solve this ridiculous problem of racism, because it's really fighting against ourselves. You know the word in the Bible that says, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." And so a people divided against themselves cannot stand. There is fighting within the family, within the human family, within the family of God, because we are God's offspring. Read Acts chapter 17, verses 26 through 28. You will see that God has made us from one blood. He already knew that we were going to be separated from each other, but still, we are His children and we are family. So the solution my friends, is to love one another, to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. And when we recognize that our neighbors, whether they speak like us, whether they look like us, whether they live like us, whether they talk like us, when we recognize that our neighbors are our family, we can love them. And when we love our neighbors as we love ourselves, we are fulfilling God's second greatest commandment. The first one is to love God, of course. And the second greatest commandment that we have is to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. Unfortunately, we have Christians or people who profess to be Christians who behave according to this social definition of race. We treat people one way whom we identify with, we treat them the best. And the people whom we do not identify with, typically of another race, we may treat them differently. Now, everyone does not behave like that, but there are too many people who behave like that. And so, my friends, I encourage you to really think about this whole thing about race and realize that the world is black. The world is black not because of color, not because of any social identity, but the world is black because everyone came from one blood, Adam and Eve, who came from the dust of the earth. And dust is dirt, and dust is soil. When I look at my dust, when I look at my dirt, when I look at my soil, it is black. Now, we didn't all turn out black. We didn't all end up black. But whether you look like it or not, you're black. And so for black people who hate against white people, you're hating your family. And for white people who hate against black people, you're hating your family. And for any other people who hate against black people or any other socially constructed race, you're hating against your family. So I encourage you today to return to love your neighbor, to love your family, your human family, as you love yourself. For God is love, and the heaven that God made to put us in is love. When we get there, there's not going to be any division. We are all one. We are all God's family. Until next time, have a blessed day wherever you are in the world. And go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Check out the article that I wrote on my blog at wellspringofthought.com if you want to read more about this in detail. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye.